Paulides, CanAm Missing Project, a copyrighted edition for our video channel. Huck and I have been playing. Yeah, good girl. Yes, a good girl. What's that? What's that? What's that? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Good girl. Good girl. All right. Well, we've got a show to do today, so I better start paying attention and stop playing around. Just a reminder, we got the Bigfoot cruise to the Caribbean coming up, and we want you to be on board. Me, Meldrum, Mariah Mayor, and Ryan Golombeski. I'll be doing 2 or 3 presentations on the ship. You want to screenshot that on the bottom right if you want to look into it. It's going to be in November of this year, November 9th through the 16th, and we're going to get there early, at least if you're going with me. Going there early, and we're going to do a tour the day before we leave on the cruise for Coral Castle. I've never been there. It's been on my bucket list for a long time. So I've been studying it. It'll be fun. It'll be a lot of fun. Starting to warm up just a little bit in Montana. And because of that, Huck's getting just a little frisky. She's wanting to play a little bit more. Yeah. Like, come on, Dad, let's go. Okay, today's cases. 2 cases. 3 people. And these are cases that you sent me, and I appreciate that, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I would say 50% of the cases, no, maybe more than that, 70% of the cases you send don't fit the profile of what we're looking for. But that's okay. I still put our people on it, and we look at them and analyze and make a decision. These cases may turn out to be 411 cases, but at this stage, I would not say that they are. And I'll get into that a little more. But let's start right off. A woman, first of all, what percentage of our population makes it to 95 years old? I mean, really. My dad right now is 91, and 95, boy, that's up there. This woman was 95 years old. Her name was Belva Day, missing February 6th of this year. She's a resident of Mountain Home, Arkansas. 5 foot tall, 100 pounds. A long time ago, I had an internist that was my general doctor. This is when I was in San Jose. And he was super smart, and communicative and very friendly. And he always told me, he said, Dave, as you get older, remember something. The smaller you are in size as a person, the longer you're going to live. He said, if you notice the really, really tall people, they don't live a long, long, long time. The small people, the thin people, they live a lot longer. Well, those words were ringing in my head when I saw Belva at 5 foot tall and 100 pounds. 95 years old. Her husband, she was married, died 5 years ago in 2020 at 92 years old. She lived alone, and her family and friends that she said she really loved to crochet and knit. Nice, peaceful, calm hobbies. And her family said she had very few outside interests anywhere outside her home and her property. I'm sorry, I turned that off. I'll turn it off again. She had very few interests outside of her home. But when she had to run errands, she'd usually get her son-in-law to drive her around to town and etc. But just like the younger set, he might have been 70 years old, you don't know. He had things to do. And it wasn't unknown for Belva to get in her car and drive into town. She was very healthy. She never had a diagnosis for dementia or Alzheimer's. She took care of herself. She knew her way around, knew where the bank was. Family said she enjoyed a simple life. Now, February 6th at 2 o'clock, Belva drove from her home in Mountain Home to pay her electric bill at the North Arkansas Electric Company in the city. A trip she had made probably hundreds of times. This time she left in her car and drove the highway into town, paid her bill, got into her car, and drove away. And she didn't take the normal route back to her house. There was a bypass that she could have taken to get to her home, and she didn't. She took the straight highway route. This is Belva, and this is the car she was driving. Now, the Mountain Home Police Department gave this case to a detective named Sam Siemens. He has the case. Once he got it, he just knew that Belva wasn't home. So they found some footage of her driving in her car outside of Mountain Home. And that was her in her car alone driving outside of Mountain Home. Now, once he got it, she was reported missing. He got the Arkansas State Police involved. And they put up their helicopter and they started tracking her. And through dogged perseverance, through Sam, Detective Sam, and the family, they started to put together her route that she was in her car driving on the highway. You know, people have cameras on the front of their home now, these doorbell cameras and things. They're pretty good. And they can pick up a car driving down the street, and if you stop it, sometimes you can even pick out who's driving. Well, each of the pictures that they were able to find show Belva driving. And she hasn't been picked up on a license plate reader on her car since February 6th, the day she went missing. And that's not a good sign, folks. Now, her car has an unusual license plate. USA Doggen, D-O-G-N. USA D-O-G-N. Now, the vehicle was supposedly last seen in Batesville, Arkansas on the 6th. And the family was questioned, and they said that she has no connections that they know of in Batesville. Let's go over that. So this is Mountain Home. Right there. There was a rumor that she'd gone through Calico Rock. Batesville's down here, about 74 miles from her house. This area out in here, very rural. And when you start driving through here, there's a lot of water in certain spots. And that always concerns me. So for an elderly lady, 95 years old, to go from here to here, she's probably never even driven there. And that's the part that gets me uncomfortable. I know. You're a good girl. You want the audience to know you're here. They know now. Yeah, they know now. They know. Well, state police put up their helicopters. The family started to drive and walk the routes that she would have taken. And they stopped and they talked to businesses all up and down the highway trying to see if they had any cameras. And they also talked to citizens to see if they had any, to see if they could come up with additional footage. Now, Belva had lived in Mountain Home for approaching 30 years. No medical diagnosis on any memory issues. Now, stop there for a second. If Belva had been to, let's say, the electric company every month for 30 years, I mean, you start thinking about it, that's way over 300 trips just to the electric company. But she also made trips into town for food, etc. And when you start to think about that, what would have been the catalyst for her to all of a sudden drive a different direction out of the city? Maybe something triggered in her brain and Alzheimer's suddenly kicked in? Could be. But let's think of the scenarios. The most likely one that I could come up with, and this is because I've seen this dozens of times, is that she drives herself into water. Because whatever the scenario is, someplace between Mountain Home and Batesville, something happened to conceal her car. They put a helicopter up for several days looking, and her family has driven that same route looking for that car and they can't find it. It hasn't been picked up on a license plate reader either. That means it's not visible. That's a problem. Now, it's been almost 3 weeks, and so far, Belva can't be found. Now, nobody can live 3 weeks without water. So if she's alive, laying in a bush, if there's water nearby, she might be able to make it. 95 years old, as thin as she is, not a lot of meat on her bones, so she's not going to live a long time like someone like me who's a little husky. Because you could live without food for weeks. You can't live without water for weeks. So if the car is in water, there's been cases where I've read where they weren't solved for decades. Decades. Sometimes it's the most obvious place that you'll miss. Could she have driven the car down the side of a hillside off the road into bushes? Certainly. This isn't an easy case. Could it have been something paranormal? It could be. I've told you before that people on both ends of the age spectrum fall into this missing 411 category. Obviously, there's something in Belva's DNA at 95 years old and hasn't been labeled with dementia or Alzheimer's. Something about her DNA that's very good. And if one of those theories is that something somewhere is interested in our DNA, I could see this. But I'm not saying this is a 411 case. I'm doing this for you guys. I probably had 50 people send me this case. And I don't want people to think I'm rude or I'm not trying to engage on a case. So there you go. I think it's probably water related though, because that's where I think she is. The next case, water related, highly water related. Again, probably 25 of you sent me this case. It's out of Georgia. And this one's a little more suspicious. I still wouldn't have done it if you guys hadn't sent in tons and tons of inquiries and say, Dave, would you please do this one? Okay, I'll do it. Involves two people, Gary Jones and Joselyn Wilson. Gary was 50 years old. Joselyn was 49. Gary was a track coach at Westminster Christian School in Georgia. And when he wasn't coaching track and field, he was a systems analyst for many years. Joselyn, math teacher at Spelman College in Georgia. She had taught at universities in the past. Very, very smart lady. Extremely smart. So was Gary. Not a lady, though. Gary was a good guy. Gary and Joselyn had attended the same college back in the day, Clark Atlanta University. And just within the last year, they started seeing each other again, rekindling friendships. They actually got engaged. And I saw both their pictures, and right away, I don't know, you get a feeling about things? I just got a feeling they're both really nice people. So, Gary, 50, Joselyn, 49. Both work in that academic circles. So on Friday, February 7th, the couple was going to spend a weekend together celebrating Gary's 50th birthday. So they drove out to Lake Oconee, and they got a room at the Lake Oconee Lodge. Very pretty place. And a very, very big lake. On February 8th, at about 3:30 in the afternoon, the couple got a boat at a place called the Fishtail Marine. And they put the 12-foot boat in at Lick Creek. It was a 12-foot John boat with a motor. Now, they got in the boat, had a motor, took off. At 5:30 that night, on the lake, people saw an odd sight. They saw a boat 2 miles north of Wallace Dam going in circles near the middle of the lake. So some boaters knew it was odd. They went over there, looked at the boat. Nobody was inside. They were smart people. They knew something bad had happened. And they got the boat under control, and they started to search the area. They didn't find anybody. So they called 911, and they got the Department of Natural Resources out there to recover the boat and do a search and figure out who the boat belonged to, who rented it, etc. It was confirmed that the boat was rented by Joselyn Wilson. DNR started searching that night, couldn't come up with anything. Called the sheriff, and the sheriff the next day came out and started doing an investigation. Sheriff explained that this boat is designed that if you fall out of it, it'll go in circles around you so you can get back in the boat. And the boat is called a Sun Dolphin Pro 120. 12 feet long, pretty shallow hull. The sheriff said that the boat had traveled 7 miles from the point where it went in. Here's the lodge at Lake Oconee. I believe the boat went in right there as well, but there was Lick Creek where they said it went in. And then you can see this meandering course of the lake, and they found the boat at about this location, just 2 miles north of the dam. This lake, pretty murky. But that doesn't really hinder the type of searches that they were doing. The sheriff went out and looked at the boat, and he found that there was a piece of birthday cake inside. It was Gary's birthday. Some snacks, life preservers, and Gary's wallet. The boat was examined by DNR and by the sheriff, and neither the boat nor the motor showed any evidence of it hitting anything. Now you got to be an investigator on this. The boat's seen going in circles, which means that whatever happened while that motor was engaged. And Gary or Joselyn had their hand on the engine and they were going along. Now you have to think as an investigator, what could eject both of them from the boat? Well, the Putnam County Sheriff was given the investigation because 2 people were missing. And a search for both of them was started right away that night. They searched until way after dark. They didn't find anything. So the next day, February 9th, the Department of Natural Resources, the Putnam County Sheriff, and a few other sheriff's agencies put boats on that lake. And the sheriff said that there had to have been over 20 boats searching. Now remember, they found this boat empty at 5:30. They rented the boat at 3:30. Less than 24 hours after the boat was found, and both went missing, searchers found Joselyn's body close to the Greene County line, half a mile from where the boat was located. And the body was turned over to the medical examiner for an autopsy. Stop there for a second. That is not normal. Usually when a body goes into the water, it's 3 to 5 days normally before that body will come back up. And the reason being is that decomposition forces your body to decompose and produce bubbles. And those bubbles will eventually lift your body to the surface. Her body coming up to the surface less than 24 hours later is very unusual. Well, they searched that area intensively, thinking, well, Gary must be there somewhere. Not having anything. And they also brought in a side scan sonar. Now, if you've watched my movies, my documentaries, I introduced you to a husband and wife that do this full time. They just donate their time. And they have one of the best side scan sonar units I've ever seen. And when you look at the monitor, it's like you're looking into a bathtub, perfectly clear water. It doesn't matter how murky the water is. Sonar works differently than that, bounces off of things. If there's a body down there, you could see it. Yeah. Easily. So the next day, February 10th, searchers find Gary's shoes floating near the shoreline. The shoes were 45 feet apart from each other. And when they went over there to examine them, they were near the shore. There was no grass or debris on the shoes that would be indicative that somebody had walked around and then thrown them in the water. They were perfectly clean. And the sheriff said that the shoelaces on the shoes were very loose. And the sheriff later made a statement that Gary was known to wear his shoes with his laces tied real loose. February 11th, Putnam County Sheriff holds a press conference. And he stated listen to this. He stated he found the case highly suspicious. Highly suspicious, his words. Instead of a possible double drowning, he upgraded the case to suspicious circumstances and turned it over to his homicide team. And they're now doing the investigation. Whoa, hold your taters. Probably in every instance like this, it should go to the homicide team. But I admire the sheriff for doing it. Now, he said at the time, I'm not going to tell you what I've seen that makes it suspicious. We'll just let it go at that. Whoa. Okay. Now, they found the shoes next to the shore belonging to Gary. I haven't seen them, but I'm going to guess they were tennis shoes. Tennis shoes float. Remember, we talked about there's parts of Canada near Vancouver where there's been many tennis shoes have washed up to shore with feet in them. Somehow decomposed and fell off the leg and the foot was still in the shoe. And still they float. Now, something floating at the surface will travel different than something floating down low. Gary is obviously underwater, you would presume. But this is missing 411, so you really don't know. February 12th. 9 Department of Natural Resource boats on the lake using side scan sonar. And the sheriff said that he was using everything he could. He also put in a series of dive teams from the sheriff's office searching for Gary's body. Now, one thing, I'm not one to question the sheriff, but searching a lake as big as Oconee is, it's like a needle in the haystack if you're a diver, especially as bad as the visibility is there. February 14th, the sheriff explained that special cadaver dogs were coming over, and they could find a dead body in the water down as far as 50 feet. Okay, I'm going to stop for a second. The lake is a maximum of 80 feet deep. I've never heard this 50-foot number, and here's why. If a body is down, let's say 70 feet, and it's decomposing, those bubbles off the body are still coming to the surface. Bubbles don't change traveling 70 to 30 feet, to 10 feet, to 5 feet. Bubble still contains what that dog is sniffing for on the cadaver side. I've never heard that it'll only go down to 50 feet. I've heard a lot of things. So what they were doing is they were doing a grid up and down the lake with the dog, trying to see if the dog will hit on any part of that lake that's producing these bubbles. So they didn't say where on the lake the tennis shoes were found, but the boat was found there. So you're going to guess that within this radius of the main part of the lake is going to be Gary's body. Now, they came down from up here. And this map doesn't do this lake justice. It's huge. February 15th to the 18th. Search continued for Gary's body. And I saw several news broadcasts touch my soul. Several of Gary's former students that he taught track and field with at the high school came and said almost the same thing. They said, I've got to be here. If I was the one that went missing, Mr. Jones would be the first one here searching for me. And there were several students there. That's the test that he was a good man. February 18th. Sheriff said that the coroner confirmed Joselyn's lungs were filled with oxygen. It's tough doing these cases before the determining factors come in. That's why I don't like to do them, but I'm doing this one for you. So if her lungs were filled with oxygen, why did she die? Now here's the kicker. The sheriff said that both of them were good swimmers. Okay, so you fall in the water. Let's just say she falls in the water, takes a big breath of air, and let's say she goes down for a second. Well, you kick yourself back up. You know how to swim. You know how to tread water. What caused her to go down? If they were both good swimmers, and let's say one of them fell in, there'd be no reason for the other one to go in. They had life preservers in the boat. Throw a life preserver. Never go into the water to try to save somebody when you have a life preserver, because bad things can happen. Also, during this search for 2 weeks, several times they had bad weather that encumbered the search, and they weren't able to go out and search for a good portion of those times. Now here's in my humble opinion, one of the weirdest facts of this case. When they pulled Joselyn's body out of the water, clutched in her hand was her phone. Friends, I've seen a lot of bodies. I've seen a lot of bodies pulled out of the water. I have never heard of something clutched in somebody's hand. Ever. Ever. Now, if you were dying and you were going underwater, wouldn't you let go of the phone and use your hands to keep you up? I'm just saying. There was a theory proposed by Department of Natural Resources. They said that obviously the boat was in gear. They were traveling down the lake. It was their theory that the boat and or the engine hit something submerged, knocked the boat up in the air, and knocked them out of the boat. Well, that's an interesting theory. But in the boat, they found a piece of Gary's birthday cake, they found his wallet, and they found all the life preservers. And if they could all swim, then why didn't they just swim over to the boat and get back in? But what blows that theory out of the water is that the sheriff confirmed they evaluated the boat and the engine, and there was no evidence that it hit anything. No damage to the hull, no damage to the rudder, no damage to the prop. You get it? The coroner said to the sheriff that it would take 4 months to come in with conclusive findings on the cause of death of Joselyn. What? 4 months? I've never heard that either. 2 months is the standard. And the only reason it's 2 months is because you submit blood, urine, chemical samples, and it takes a long time for the lab to get those back, to get the numbers right. Now, I'm just going to say this. They didn't say that there was any alcohol found in the boat. I'm going to go out on a limb and say these people weren't the type of people to use drugs or narcotics. So I'm going to say that there's nothing in their system that's going to be surprising. So what are they waiting for? The sheriff said that the coroner said that he couldn't make a determination if she drowned or not. Okay, well, hold your taters. If she didn't drown, then how did she die? If her lungs were filled with air, how did she die? So it's been way more than 2 weeks. Where's Gary's body? Why hasn't it surfaced? The sheriff hasn't stated what rose the level of his suspicion to turn it over to homicide. My question is there injuries to Joselyn's body that indicate something? I'll just say something very odd. Really odd. That she was standing up in the boat and an eagle flew down, grabbed her by the face, pushed her out of the water. Something stupid. Then she'd have scratches all over her face from the talons. You see what I'm saying? Was there some type of injury that was so unusual that he brought it up? But he still refused to say what it is. Both victims, highly professional, highly educated, highly respected. Both of them academic types. Don't forget, what time in Missing 411 is the most common time to disappear? 4 o'clock. What time were they last seen alive? 3:30. Between 3:30 and 5:30, they were not seen at all until that boat was seen near the dam. On a big lake with people living on the shore, no screams, no nothing heard. No witnesses. Unknown cause of death. One body still missing. And I'm going to keep pounding this one home. The boat motor was on and engaged. They were not sitting there. They were moving. So, my question is that if they left and they were motoring down the lake, did they get to this position and something happened? Because that's the location where Joselyn's body was found? That would seem to make sense. So, was it just a leisurely cruise down the lake and then they were going to maybe stop here and eat their cake together? See what I'm saying? I don't know. Now, many of you sent me this case. Many. I understand the questions. I can tell you that water-related disappearances and deaths are strange. Even the ones that turn out to be very mundane are strange. This one is on the high side of strange in my book. It may end up being a whole lot of nothing. I'd like to know why the sheriff has this high level of suspicion, but I'll withhold that. Let's see how it plays out. 4 months. We got 3.5 months to go until the coroner comes in with the cause of death on Joselyn. In the meantime, I have a lot of respect for those students, and I have a lot of admiration for those students who all came out to help find Gary. Some of you may ask, well, Dave, on those shoes that were found near shore, why did you make the big deal about there's no stuff on them. There's no grass, etc. Because somebody may claim that Gary got out of the water and walked away in those shoes, later threw them back in the water. No, that's not the implications that were made by the sheriff. To him, it appeared as though those shoes had always been in the water since the day it happened. So friends, I appreciate you being here. Remember the Bigfoot cruise and the locations that I've told you about before that I'm going to be at. I'm going to be at the Timothy Alberino Conference, June 27th to June 28th in Bozeman, Montana. Never been to Bozeman? You need to go. It's really nice. September 4th through the 6th, Phenomicon. And the last one, November 7th through the 15th, the Bigfoot Cruise. Those are the three I'm going to be at for sure this year. Nothing else got confirmed. And honestly, I don't really want to go to much stuff. See you guys at these things. The cruise, there'll be hundreds of us there. You can book every night you can book a dinner with me and we can sit and have dinner together and talk if that's what you want to do. So, thanks. You are appreciated. You can follow me at the CanAm Missing on Twitter, at CanAm Missing, Canadian American Missing. Follow me on Twitter and make sure that if you get a book and you've read it, turn it over to the library so other people can read the books. And thank you. You can still get my book, Bigfoot, Wild Men and Giants, in hardback on our website right now. NA, like North America, NABigfootsearch.com. I've got a few copies left. I'm still sending them out, signing them. Hardback. It's huge. It is huge. All right. Thank you. Huck says, thank goodness, Dad, you're done. I want to go out and play more. Okay. Have a good one, folks. Remember to be kind. The kindness generation. Paulides is out.